So he promised to do it twice every year, and true to his word, the president, for the second time this year, invited the media to an encounter with him at Jubilee House. But how effective was this last media encounter of 2018? Did we get new information? Did we get the opportunity to learn about things that we ordinarily wouldn't hear about? How did the media perform, as we always seek to know at these events? And how did the president's message, his address, which he delivered over a period of about 40 minutes, how did that go down? To help us understand, of course, we're very pleased to have Lawyer Tanku once again. He joined us yesterday for the pre-analysis, so now the post-analysis, it's only fair that he joins us again. Roland is with us as well, as always.
Yeah, definitely.
No doubt. And we'll also be connecting via Skype with Dr. Kobi Mensah, and he is a political marketer. So, very comprehensive conversation.
Thanks for joining us.
I'm most grateful. I'm great.
You're monitored.
I'm monitored. I'm monitored.
Your
Although
initial impressions will usually be the question we'll ask you.
I didn't get to monitor on TV to see the visual because the non-verbal communication is critical in communication. But I listened in my car, and the first few statements of the president just alarmed me. He alarmed me because the president, straight from the onset, created the impression that ideally, if he had his own way, he wouldn't do it. Because there are other ways, we are monitoring him and all those things, but because he made a promise, he has to do it. And this is my problem about political leadership in this country. See, it's good to make promises, but when you make promises and it's becoming increasingly clear that those promises cannot be honored and it's reasonable for you not to go ahead with it, you just have to be honest and have the modesty to go back to the people. I said I would be doing these things twice a year, but because of A, B, C, D, I can't do it. But for you to go ahead and do it just to satisfy the tick boxing exercise, and then it turned out not to be meaningful and effective, is a tragedy. And I think that we need to start getting to that stage where we need to have some honest and open discussion with people. I mean, yeah, promises, yes, you can make promises. Because even unless whatever you have promised to do is statutory, then you can say that, well, my hands are tied, I have to do it because if I don't do it, there will be legal consequences. Even then, with strict liability requirements, the law allows for reasonableness and all those things. So frankly, if the president thought he wasn't really prepared for this, that thing, he wouldn't have done it. It's just because he promised, that's why he's doing it. I think there was not. And it was demonstrated going forward in the sort of things and the way he was even briefed there about the format and how we got there and all this. And I thought, no, we didn't have to hear about all those things there.
Well, we'll talk a bit more about the content, but first, let's hear this. This is what the president said when he talked about the economy.
As a result of our policies, the fundamentals of our economy are in the right place. The foundation has been laid for the rapid growth and development we expect next year and succeeding years. The 2019 budget focuses on 6 strategic pillars: entrepreneurship, infrastructure, industrialization, social intervention, agricultural modernization, and improving efficiency in revenue mobilization. Available data up to the end of September 2018 indicates that Ghana's economic health is in good shape. Headline and core inflation generally trended downwards in 2018. Headline inflation dropped to 9.3% in November 2018, down from the 11.8% in December 2017. In real terms, growth of credit to the private sector showed a strong recovery, registering a growth of 6.8% in September 2018, compared to a contraction of 2.3% in 2017. Interest rates eased downwards in line with the reduction in the monetary policy rate. The interbank weighted average lending rate declined to 4.7% to 16.3% between September 2017 and September 2018. Treasury securities also declined over the period. In other words, the fundamentals are all pointing in the right direction. Even though there's little doubt that salaries and wages continue to be low, an increase in income levels can only come about by the expansion and growth of the economy. And that is exactly what we're working to achieve. I'm confident that there will be welcome news on that front soon.
There we go. So those were the president's thoughts on the economy. Not different from what we've heard government communicate about it all this time, that yes, it's positive, quoting international commendations from all of the,
the Bretton Woods institution.
Indeed. So nothing new there. But actually, I want to ask your assessment of everything the president said, whether there was anything in there that sounded like, oh, okay, that's some new information.
Frankly, I didn't pick up any new information from what the president said. The only thing that I thought was new to me was the fact that I would not, in my wildest dream, believe that there are certain things that the president would not be briefed. But what came across for me that was new, that was unusual, that was surprising, was the fact that it appears some very critical, very, very important issues, the president is not properly briefed on that. And for me, that was very, very, very unusual. Now, the other thing that the president said, which I thought needs some concentration on, but unfortunately, because it's not a high news value, we wouldn't talk about it, was when the president talked about the technocrats trying to ensure that we get value for money for whatever infrastructure that will be rolling out. And I have always been concerned about the way the political actors allow these technocrats to go out of the line and hide behind political patronage and get away with it. And I think that a lot of the problems we are having, the technocrats cannot be left out. So if the president is acknowledging that the technocrats have to actually now take some of the responsibility, I thought that was a very, 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 very refreshing discourse. But it all depends on how we're going to take this thing forward. But otherwise, listening to what the president said yesterday, especially from the economic point of view, we've heard it several times. And this is not the first time. I mean, as for the president talking about what Madame Lagarde came to say here, I think it's just something we need to just brush aside, because they would always tell you those things. But as the MPP said when they were in opposition, when the NDC was quoting these things, and as the NDC would be doing, and it would continue, the economic indicators would be painting other pictures. But if those things are not reflecting on the ground, then people will talk about it. And yesterday somebody raised that and said glossy, and I think the president was a little bit upset about the use of the word glossy and all that. And he said the facts are there, it's about the facts, yes. But we also have to admit the fact that this textbook, theoretical indicators and all those things, if they are not reflecting in people's lives, if they are reflecting in the way things are being done, I mean, people would continue to cast doubt about it. Because
how would you perhaps critique the president's responses to questions that are relating to perhaps concerns that have been raised by the opposition especially and other think tanks? Now, there was a particular response he gave about what the opposition thinks and think tanks as well.
Well, you see, governance is a collective. And the problem about, and I think yesterday I mentioned it, is about this celebrity way we look at our politics. So even when the opposition is raising legitimate concern, you have to be very careful how you engage with those concerns, because if you're not careful, the opposition would certainly capitalize on that and make you unpopular. And you don't want to be unpopular. No politician wants to be made unpopular, especially when elections is staring you in the face. So there is this tendency for us to want to rubbish anything that comes from the opposition. The NDC did that when they were in government, and the MPP is going to be doing that again in government. But I think that is not the way to go, because it cannot be the case that everything that comes from the opposition is something that is not worthwhile. The same thing that when the MPP was in opposition, it is just unimaginable to think that almost all the things they were putting out there, all the allegations, all the accusations, it is not imaginable for the NDC to continually say that, oh no, it's just the usual politicking. I think we need to come to that situation where when people are making legitimate concerns, you may have an issue with the totality of those concerns, but pick up those that needs to be picked up, and then those that you need to push to the political actors to talk about. But the president has to really appreciate the fact that civil society and the opposition party have a key role to play in our governance system, and if you ignore them, you ignore them at the peril of the nation. And at the end of the day, we are all giving people leadership opportunities, not to serve themselves, but because of the national interest. So if the national interest demands that you engage with those concerns that they are making, you have to do it. It's not about you.
You mentioned that you were surprised to see the president wasn't briefed on certain key issues. Any examples?
The medical stores issue. Ojo, you know about this medical stores issue. Corruption Watch has consistently spoken about this. The Corruption Watch has run about 3 segments on this. And the tragedy of this...
And you feel that he should have been briefed, or he knows about it?
Because this is...
Maybe he's not briefed.
That is why I'm surprised.
No, but you see, this is the thing. The Central Medical Stores burned down in what, 2015?
15.
Yeah. And we have talked about it. When it burned down, it was a big national...
It was a breaking news event.
11 people have been identified as having been behind the arson. Investigations have gone on and on and on. We've engaged every health minister since it happened, from Alex Segbefia through Kwajima Menu. This thing has been talked about over and over again. So I must say, I was also a bit surprised to hear the president asking the questioner, oh, so medical stores, oh, they were burned down? Really? It was arson?
Arson.
You know, it seemed as if...
that part was surprising.
Yeah, I personally thought, that's something that he ought to know about. He ought to be, at least, like you said, briefed about.
Well, we have Dr. Kobi Mensah. He's a political marketer, teaches marketing and also other subjects at the University of Ghana Business School. Good morning to you. You're joining us via Skype.
Good morning, good guys.
Yeah.
Hardly do I get a platform to share with you guys.
You are a big man.
We're grateful. But from the point of view, or where you're coming from, what will be your conclusions about perhaps the speaking points of the president, his mannerisms, his tone, and the way he addressed the media yesterday?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I think Council said something about how the president actually, takes issues from the opposition and the civil society, and is at best. I've said time and time again that our political parties, when they're speaking, they mirror each other. They think that they're speaking to NDC. They're not speaking to NDC. They're speaking to Ghanaians. When NDC is speaking, they think they're speaking to MPs. They're not speaking to NDC, they're speaking to Ghanaians. You're not speaking to civil society, you're speaking to Ghanaians. Because my political communication, actually tells me that these institutions, including the government and including the party government, they represent Ghanaians. So when you are actually speaking, when somebody asks you a question and you think it's the dumbest question ever, mind the idea that you're actually speaking to Ghanaians, that you have responsibility to answer appropriately. Now, this is what's actually killing our politics in this country, the shadowing of political opposition. And so that they eliminate the people of this country in the conversation. It's not the best. I mean, if you've been asked about the drones for medicine, you don't say you prefer that to, they are confirmed flying to Burkina Faso. I think it's not the best. Now, I would say that the media also understand that they are active, players in the political system. Media is not just a channel. The media are active players. Now, over the years, we've done presidential encounter or media encounter for so many years. What stops us from sitting down, reviewing the process, and then suggesting to the political class a model that we think works for us? Now, I have also said time and time again that reform has never been part of our language. We do things and we go back to bed. Now, I remember last week, some people had issues with the media encounter. Now, this year, we have no issues with the media encounter. Why do we sit down and every year complain? Now, the leadership of journalism can actually sit down, or the key players or the stakeholders in presidential media encounter can sit down and analyze the process and say, okay, we have a suggestion, and then we can table appropriate format to the presidency or to the political class and say, perhaps we think this format would be good for both of us. And we just don't sit down and complain. Remember, governance is a co-creation. Governance is something that every one of us have a stake in it, and not sit there for the political class to take advantage of us. No.
And at the end of the day, the president is in a position where he seems to be perhaps almost like in a state of denial, or perhaps also not in touch with what the realities are on the ground, especially if you look at what the reactions have been on social media and other commentary platforms. Would you say that's the case?
I think that's the case. Now, and it's a case because in Ghana, politicians don't think that the media bites now, or the citizens bite now. If the media and the politicians think that the media and the citizens bite enough, they would not, come shallow prepared. In this country, they are discussing Brexit. And if you look at the seriousness that the political class attached to Brexit, you can understand why. Because their citizenship, their media, them to task. And so when you see the engagement in the House of Parliament, it's a very heated engagement. It's a very serious business. Now, in our case, when a politician is going to meet a journalist, I can tell you, they don't even prepare because they know you can't bite. I can tell you, they know that the citizenship have a remote control of 8-year term in their mind. And as a result, they think they can win the next election. If they think that we can bite enough, we can take them to task. If they think that we can seek responsibility from them, now they will sit up, they will prepare, and they will make sure that when they're coming to sit in front of you in terms of the media encounter, they will be 100% prepared. But as we speak, I'm telling you, the politicians in their psyche think that they can just say anything, do anything, and they can go scot-free.
Is that the same reaction you get to, Mr. Tanko?
Well, people are getting disillusioned, especially when they look at the way, and it's an open secret. I know I might offend some of the smaller parties, but it's an open secret that within our lifetime, these two main political parties, NDC, MPP, are going to dominate. And we have had a feel of NDC, we have had a feel of MPP. And the vibes coming out there is that really we think that we've been taken for granted. And therefore, these politicians don't care about us. If they care about us, they wouldn't be behaving the way they're behaving. And that is why it is crucial that the last institution, if you like, standing, is the media that is supposed to be providing that semblance of hope. And so when such opportunities are created for the media, and then the opportunity is not given for the media to reflect and ask questions that reflect what the feelings of people are, then we are really treading on very, very, very worrying grounds, because if people then lose hope in the politicians, then we are going to have a problem. There was a there was a team of researchers who came from the US recently to come and do something to find out about the issue about backlash to democracy across the continent. And they wanted to find out why we haven't gone down the route of other countries where people have thrown their hands in despair against political actors and political institutions. And one of the things that came up during those discussions was that it certainly is not because of the politicians, but it's because of the civil society organizations and then the media that is holding us together. So I think that the politicians would have to up their game. The way things are going now, we are tilting towards a situation where if you're not careful, there would be a lot of apathy in the way people engage with our political actors. But on the economy, you know, the president made some very important statement, which I think was laudable, that he would put together some economic management experts to advise him. I think he mentioned that to advise him about how to remain within the fiscal discipline and all this. And I thought that was good. But are we not the ones who were saying that there's too much power given to the president to be putting together all these teams and all this? So is it going to be another layer of bureaucracy or what? But if the president wants to do that, I think it's a very good idea, because going into elections, all these beautiful things that the IMF had come to talk about would be eroded. Because it's a fact, and then we've seen that happen. So if you're going to put up a team to try and prevent that from happening, then that team has to be independent in the real sense of independence. But what do we see here? I mean, when politicians are going to put together a team, what they are looking at eventually is they don't want somebody who can come and rock the boat. But we should get to the stage where we have matured in our politics, where we rather want to bring somebody who will look us in the face and tell us what one of our own will not be able to tell us.
Now, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about the format of the day and how it went. I want your thoughts on this, particularly because you are uniquely placed, as somebody who teaches, journalism. Do you think the format of a Meet the Press, where there's a 40-minute delivery of a speech, followed by questions which, unfortunately, were very limited on this occasion. I don't think there were more than 12, 13 questions asked the president. What do you think of the format of the Meet the Press on this occasion?
I really couldn't understand why that format, frankly. Because I thought when you look at what happened previously, people raised questions, not necessarily about the format per se, but the questions were about the number of people who had the opportunity to ask questions and the fact that certain media houses didn't get that opportunity. And I thought the last one that we had, there was an attempt to correct some of them. But then now we've gone down, we've gone even about 2-3 steps backwards. Because if you look at it, I hear there was an engagement between the ministry and the GJA. I don't know whether you were aware of that. I don't know how that arrangement came into place and what it was supposed to serve and all those things. And I think that they were right in trying to highlight on the key areas. So they looked at...
Yeah, I was just going to say a bit more on that in a moment. I just want to bring in Dr. Kobi-Mensah at this point, because I'm aware that he's also got another engagement. Dr. Mensah, on the same issue of the format of it, there were some differences this year. A collaboration with GJA came up with a format where questions, everybody identified in advance which sector their question would come from. And the idea was that they would collate them and then about 6 or 7 questions per sector. But time didn't permit for that to be properly actualized. How did the format of the event strike you?
Okay, thank you. I don't think time didn't permit. I think that it was stage managed. You know, if it really was an arrangement between the Ministry of Information and GJA, then I think this is a very bogus arrangement. Now, I think that if there was that arrangement, then GJA was supposed to actually consult members to find out what the appropriate format it should be. Now, usually when government are on the back foot, this is what they do. They try to stage manage every process, and they try to make sure that they can actually push everybody to the corner. I think we shouldn't accept that. We should actually get a format that perhaps members of GJA had met, had discussed, and then tabled, to the protocols that are actually, manage some of these things. And then perhaps we can start discussing it. We don't have to sit until next year and then come back to complain. We should take this process on ourselves. Perhaps GJA can constitute a committee. We'll look at the best practices across the globe and then table a very good one that actually responds to our needs. I don't think that we should expect some of these things because it is not good for us. I don't think this method was good.
Now, this is the third or fourth Meet the Press that this president has done. He promised to do 2 every year. It's an improvement on what happened before. But we see other countries where literally every week the president engages the media, because it is the most important conversation, if you will, between the leader and the, and the governed. Do you think perhaps there is the possibility of us doing even more here in Ghana, or is the president just too busy for us to bother him with press encounters?
No, I think we can. I mean, the president himself actually talked about open government, and I think I was reading a script prepared by the the Ministry of Communication, actually talking about in a digitized in Ghana, an open Ghana. There is every possibility that we can engage the press. I mean, we have a press corps in the presidency, don't we? I mean, what we see is that in the White House, every week or every week, yes, the White House actually briefs the press, and then the press actually come out. If we really mean this business that the press is the fourth estate of government, then of course we are active participants in the process of governance. So I think that yes, if we can't do it every week, what stops us from having it every month engagement? Because presidential, governance is not in a moment, kind of, or any other day kind of a process. So if you really mean business to be an open government, open your doors every month, brief us what, discussions has been, give us what, productive, measures you've taken. So therefore the media can also brief the people. But if we have to meet as and when you feel possible, like twice I don't think it's a good idea. The president has to open his doors monthly to brief us. And I'm sure it will be the good thing that they have come to add to what perhaps President Akuffo actually instituted.
Right. I want to thank you very much. I know that you're rushed, but we appreciate your time with us this morning. Dr. Kobi Mensah is a political marketer. So I guess on the same issue of this format and whether it ought to be improved and whether we ought to see more of these, is it practically possible for us to do that?
The format certainly has to be improved, and I think that we need to, GJA would have to engage with its members for us to look at better ways of doing it. I mean, frankly, when you look at the way it was done previously, it wasn't that bad. It was just a matter of just fine-tuning some of them. But in the attempt to fine-tune them, I think we've just taken it to another really ridiculous level.
Can I be controversial for a moment? I actually think that the theory of the plan was good. I don't know whether you guys will agree.
Well, we don't know the theory,
because the theory, I mean, what it was, how it was explained to us, was that when you arrive and you register, there are about 9 or 10 different sort of sectors or categories. So tick the one which applies to the one question that you're going to ask. Everybody gets one question. So which of those sectors does your question fall under? So everybody ticked one. What the team was then supposed to do was to collate them so that you know how many questions are coming under each sector.
Based on their own discussion.
That's right. And then you could pick who you would pick for questions under each sector in a way that would be representative. So all regions of the country will be represented, all media houses will be represented. Of course, not everybody can ask a question, but there would have been some sort of equity, gender, and so forth, okay? Because you have some idea of, who is asking what. So in theory, it seemed a sound plan, but there didn't appear enough time.
Yeah, but when you do that, you have to provide sufficient time. And in this case, you're talking about the media. This is a model that is used for question time. I don't know whether you follow question time and the BBC.
Yes.
Question time, that's the model.
Yeah.
Dr. Kobi Mensah, interestingly, and myself, we understudied that program because we wanted to come and do something similar here when we were returning. So we went and understudied, and it's a very, very interesting thing. So they would do just this. So they look at thematic areas, you indicate. So it's good, but then you have to provide sufficient time, and you need to let people know what is going to happen. So for instance, if you look at that question time, they would give you maybe, if it's about 45 minutes, you know that these are the number. But when you assemble all these people and you know you don't have time, you don't spend a lot of time, almost about 40 minutes going into what happened with the presidency. So that is why, that's why I'm saying that in our attempt to rectify the problem, we then brought something and then we went totally out of...
You know, the former president, John Mahama, I think the last Meet the Press encounter, that engagement was minus his opening speech. So it was just a period where he said the press should ask any question that they wanted. Mind you, we have an opportunity granted by the Constitution for the President to address the nation through Parliament. And so it's not as if that we're bereft of the opportunity to hear the President speaking. And even before then, almost every week, we hear him through our correspondents give speeches at events in which he is giving colorful coverage than any other personality of the land as far as news placement and worthiness is concerned.
And there is also the ministers do this press, what's it called? The ones they do every week.
Media press.
Media press and all those things.
So it's not as if we're...
Yeah. So
would you think that format under the John Mahama administration, the last one that they did?
I think that if you're going to go with this model, which is creative and innovative, then you have to provide enough time. And if you're going to provide enough time, then you should cut out the initial remarks and all those things, because especially when you're not going to come and say anything new. If you have something new to say and you want to set the agenda with that, then you could say that and then move on. But when you look at what you have said, and unfortunately, usually when you go according to this format, then what you're trying to do is to box people into asking you questions within this time. But you come and do a preamble, and yet people are not even restricted to asking you questions within that preamble. People can still go out of that preamble and ask you questions. So frankly, that preamble serves no purpose. So I think that maybe Dr. Kobi Mensah is saying, maybe it's strategic. It's strategic because you want to buy time, and so it could be that. I mean, that's part of political strategy and all those things, and it could be the case. But whatever it is, I think that since the president has willingly said that he's going to be doing this thing quite often, we need to be seeing these things improved.
Can we also address the elephant in the room? The president was more than half an hour late. The event was supposed to start at 5 p.m. He got there after 5:30. And then, of course, we had national anthem and all of those things before he launched into his 40-minute address. Okay, so that's literally an hour and 10 minutes.
Exactly.
That the media did not have for questions.
And you know, the president even indicated, so it appears he had made it clear that he wanted the program to finish at 7.
At 7, yes.
So at the point when they were going to ask the questions, he said, no, this is going to take us beyond 7 and all these things. So if you know you're not going to go beyond 7 p.m. and you've come 30 minutes late, then certainly something has to give in. It's about concessions, you understand? So the president needed to make some concessions. But it appears the president wanted to do what he wanted to do, and yet the media would have to take the if you like, the deficit in that score. But when the media takes the deficit, then it's going to overshadow the very things that you came to do there. So if you look at it, and actually it's very interesting, and I think informally yesterday we discussed it. When you look at the timing was a masterstroke. You know, almost all the prime time programs were dedicated to that particular encounter, and so this controversy that was going to be discussed was all, you know, and then you have this golden opportunity going into Friday, Christmas, and all those things to really capture the media landscape, and then you let just procedural things and avoidable mistakes to overshadow this thing. I think it's just unfortunate.
At what point then can we be taken serious as a media by the political actors if the questions we ask are deemed to be categorized as informed positions of the opposition? It looks like we've almost been categorized to be the mouthpiece of the opposition because we have raised issues that perhaps may be bothering people. I'm asking this question because many of the comments from the media may not necessarily be comments that they may have generated. Could have been generated because we've interacted with our publics for a very long time, with the ordinary Ghanaian, so we seem to be the conveyor belt by which we can answer the questions of the ordinary Ghanaian. For example, there was a response he gave about he doesn't believe that anybody can say that the free SHS has not been beneficial because there's money in the pocket of people. Whilst we know that the same parents who have their children in senior high schools enjoying free SHS are raising issues about not having enough money in their pockets.
Yeah, you see, the human tendency is that when you do something that is innovative, that is creative, that has some benefits to people, you want people to applaud. Yes, but this is governance. You know, governance is a long process. So yeah, we would applaud you for what you have done, but it doesn't mean that it's an absolute thing. I mean, it doesn't mean that when there are other things that we have to talk about, we shouldn't talk about it. And I think that is something we need to start coming to terms with. Yes, people have benefited from the free SHS, but it didn't come without problems. And the problems are still staring us in the face. And people have a right to voice out those concerns. And certainly, what else do you expect the media to do? The media is not going to be singing the praises of government. The media, it's not the responsibility of the media to go out there and be saying to government, you've done this right, you've done this right, you've done this right. That's not the role of the media. The role of the media, although the media would also have to be objective and fair, but the main role of the media is to ask the very difficult questions that nobody would ask. And if the media is seen as aligning to the opposition, it's because the opposition is basically trying to put the government on the spot. And the media is also trying to put the government on the spot. So you would see the opposition and the media singing the same tune, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the media is doing the bidding of the opposition. It certainly cannot be the case. But it is very, 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 very important that the media have to realize that the politicians would always try and make you look bad. They will try and make you look as if you are unpatriotic. They will try and make you look as if you're being too cynical. But that is what you have to continue doing. They've all done it, and they will continue to do it. It's not going to stop.
Okay, so we're opening the phone lines, and well, you just saw the numbers. You started calling in. We have Ernest Akiko, who is calling us from Elubu. Ernest, good morning to you. You want to also contribute to the program, but also your own comments about what transpired yesterday. The president interacting with the media.
Mr. Roland.
Good morning. Please talk to us. Can you reduce the volume on your set so that we interact through the phone lines? I think that's better.
All right. I think it's better now.
Great. So go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Roland, in fact, I thank you for doing the good work for Mother Ghana, you and your colleagues in the studio. In fact, the yesterday's encounter was very good, only that there were some few issues that need to be addressed in the next encounters by the president. The time given to the journalists was not enough. And most of the time, much of the time was used by the president to deliver a speech, which was not the best. It should have been dedicated for the journalists to probe and ask questions concerning the economy, education, the sanitation issues, the president promise of making Accra the cleanest city, and a whole lot of issues. There are a whole lot of issues that the journalists could have asked questions, but the time was not enough. So the managers of the program need to work much on that. And most of the questions that the journalists asked, they were baseless, because some of them, they have no meaning. If you want to ask a question, you need to research well and ask a question that will benefit all, and the question that will have an effect on the economy, on the area, key sectors of the country and the economy. While some questions were irrelevant, I think the journalists need to work out on some of those issues in the next encounter. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And Kojo, we have more callers on the line.
Yes, indeed. Abu Jamal is in Tamale. Abu, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Thank you for calling us, Abu. Well, what's on your mind about yesterday's event?
Yes, my name is Abu Jamal, calling from Tamale. A researcher with the regional...
Right, it appears that line is not very clear, Abu. If you can call us back, please do. We'd love to hear your thoughts. But in the meantime, let's talk to Festus. Festus, good morning. Where are you calling us from?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah,
Festus Enchimens, right? Is this Festus?
Yeah, I'm calling from Akuffo-Addo in the central region of Ghana.
Wonderful. Festus, tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm calling from Akuffo-Addo in the central region of Ghana.
Yeah, Festus, listen to us on the phone. Don't worry about the TV, okay? Just listen on the phone.
Okay.
Switch the TV volume off and talk to us. What's on your mind?
I called in relation to the sanitation problem in Ghana yesterday when I called concerning what I want the president to ask. I want the journalists to ask the president, I mean. Yeah, so I was disappointed I didn't hear anything of that sort. Because sanitation is very dear to my heart. Actually, I'm an environmental officer. And I have the passion for Ghana to become one of the cleanest countries in the world. But it seems that we keep speaking on issues in relation to sanitation, and then we don't do what we are supposed to do when it comes to sanitation-related issues. And we keep going here and there. A ministry has been created for that effect, and then money has been allocated to do the job. Meanwhile, officers who are supposed to do the job don't even have a motorbike to even get to the hinterlands, to even speak to them on sanitation-related issues, not to even talk of even owning a toilet facility to stop open defecation. And I'm so disappointed that the journalists couldn't get the opportunity to ask questions that are in relation to some of these issues. And it bothers my mind. For how long are we going to keep, running a country like this, and then we'll neglect sanitation-related issues? And the most important thing we're supposed to do to curtail the situation. So I was very disappointed that the journalists couldn't get the chance to do that. But going forward, I think the government and then those in charge or the organizers should allocate enough time for the journalists, because it is meeting the press, and it is not State of the Nation address. So the press should be given opportunity to ask all the questions they need to ask. Then we can know the way forward as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Festus. Stephen Nyako is in Akim Winchi, I believe. Yeah, Stephen, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well. You?
Not bad at all. It's great to hear from you. Tell us what's on your mind.
Yesterday encounter by president's encounter with the media was very nice, very fantastic. What I am suggesting is that the media as an institution should always put the president on their toes, or the president on his toes, because the NDC, MPP, their political parties, and what I know, they are there to achieve their own benefit, to have their own goal. So media as an institution, it's your duty, it's your responsibility to ask government the questions.
Oh dear, we seem to have lost Stephen there, but I think we got the general gist of what he was saying, didn't we? Who else have we got, Roland?
Well, we have Abeku Kwansa from Mankasim. You're calling us from Mankasim, Abeku. Good morning to you, Atanen.
I'm 76. In the Muhu Kwame Kuma, bet Mrs. Sierra. Neither I know a mamma Musima, Japan choke. MVP, Abi Pierre, in faint, cried for the issue. Me answer my better a son into Yapon choke. Yapon choke. Neither name a pede would be some corruption now. The ministers and Numnadi, the honorable would be. Yam of Ro, me a paying Tia Senera, or Mana Edamanin, until I am not saying it. Non shaking ye, that massy. Mamma could have a view.
Wow. That was nice.
Yes.
Translation?
Straight to the point. Yeah. And he says that he's witnessed the period of Nkrumah up to this point, and he would want the president to look at the current circumstances of the ordinary Ghanaian. I know that perhaps things are not as he seems to take a look at it, especially when you come to the ordinary Ghanaian's position and the concerns being raised that they don't have money in their pocket, so to speak. I mean, just by paraphrasing what he said.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you so much.
Quite fascinating. And straight away, he just launched into,
yes.
Will I call it a tirade?
No, not exactly a tirade. Yes, very measured.
Yeah, very measured.
Very eloquent, actually.
Very,
if you understand Fanti, that was some wonderful Fanti there. All right, okay, shall we take another call? Biba is on the line. Biba Bright from Gambaga. Biba, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for calling. Talk to me. What are you thinking?
Yes, it's about the presidential encounter we had yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the number of questions I counted, there were only 14. And then some of the questions, the president managed to know. And then that opportunity for people to ask a follow-up question. Don't you think that maybe as time goes on, it may be prudent that we allow some few journalists, let's say 10, to have a full engagement, let's say for like 2 hours, just asking questions on behalf of other journalists so that they'll be able to probe the issues up to the bottom. But this issue of like somebody will come and ask one question. In fact, I'm a teacher. And when the student is going to ask a question and just ask one question, sometimes it requires additional questions for you to be able to understand that this is what the person is looking for you to be able to give, the correct answer. But that issue of like just ask a simple question, like a primary school, for me, it doesn't bring out all the relevant issues just like the way we always wanted to hear. You see that most of the questions, the president had a way of, going around them, not going straight to the point to answer them.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah, we call it parrying, like parrying the question. They have a way of going away. It's part of political communication, I guess.
Indeed.
On propaganda. There was a lot of them yesterday, the pinpointing the enemy, which is a propaganda technique, which politicians do a lot. And then there was a lot of what we call the glittering generality. Oh, we have put in place this mechanism, this, that. What does that mean? But if you allow follow-up questions, then people... But you see, the follow-up questions, sometimes you may come there prepared to ask a particular question. But when somebody asks a question and the president leaves a gap, leaves it, you should be able to, depart from your prepared question and follow up on that. And I think that is something that gradually we have to really incorporate.
Or even you can refer him to a follow-up and then ask your substantive.
So it's something that I think GJA would have to, we have to work collectively on this to fine-tune some of these points.
And if we want GJA to better do the collaboration, in what format would we want, let's say, an encounter to be, other than just consistently meeting the president?
See, it is not going to be feasible for us to want to see the president often as the media. Because the president has other responsibilities and all those things. And I know people would want to say, well, in other parts of the world, they make themselves quite everything. But the architecture is different. So we still have to, I think that when you look at what is done at the Meet the Press series, is to serve a particular purpose. What the president is doing with this encounter also is to serve a particular purpose. I think all we need to do is that, especially when the president said he's going to do it twice. So, for instance, it's not possible that almost all the journalists who would go there would be able to ask a question at that particular encounter. But if they're not able to ask the question at that particular encounter, there should be an opportunity for maybe, if you like, a mini sort of encounter again to deal with those outstanding issues or something like that. And then if we come for the substantive one, the second one, then those who couldn't ask questions would be given the opportunity. But I think that what GJA and the government tried to do this time around, it might be creative. We just have to look at it again. And I think we need to include a lot of the stakeholders, because I didn't know, and I'm sure I've spoken to a few media houses who said they didn't really know how these things was done. But we need to interrogate this going forward and try and make it better.
Yeah, and perhaps it's time we started using technology. President doesn't have to be physically present in a particular place to answer questions. Technology allows for him to be able to do that from
virtually
anywhere.
we can do it.
But that's why the president said that he thought this thing was no longer necessary because because of technology.
But what he was saying was that he thinks we are aware of what he's doing. So that's why he didn't think this would be necessary. That's different. It's watching you do things is very different from asking you why you're doing them. So for me, I don't think it's the same.
No,
I think it's
not the same,
important for us to have the chance to ask him questions and for him to answer. But if technology can help us do that more often, we should consider that that option. But also, he does the regional tours. He did a regional tour this year. Perhaps in every region he should engage the media there.
When he goes there, they do that, but they still remain within the press corps. That is the problem. It still remains within the press corps. And I have to say, there has been some research that has been conducted. Press corps in our part of the world hardly ask hard-hitting questions. Because they're almost always with you. It's that friendly neighbor relationship. The press corps is a friendly neighbor of the president. So they would never, ever, especially when in our part of the world, it's an open secret that they determine who is sent to the press corps.
Exactly.
So why would I, and with all the traveling and all those things, why would I want to come and rock the boat? So if we want it to be meaningful, when we go to the regions, we should actually open it up to the other regional reporters or journalists to also engage.
Can we talk about one of the answers that the president gave to the question about Oslo?
The Oslo thing.
You've been following it, haven't you?
I have been following it. And for me, I think it was unfortunate that in one breath, we say we want to fight corruption. And then in another breath, we are not demonstrating that we really want to fight corruption. Let's forget about the fact that maybe there is no incontrovertible evidence, and let's forget about the fact that they're saying that we haven't even purchased it. But if you borrow from the legal concept, it's something we call inchoate offenses. An attempt to do something itself, right? Now,
it's a commitment.
It's something. It's something. Now, there is evidence to suggest that somebody had put A, B, C, D in a document that has been presented to the legislative arm of government for them to pass. And as a result of that, that thing was picked. You would say that we haven't committed resources, but who put that in there? What was the motive and all these things? These are issues that needs to be interrogated. Because if people can be arrested for attempting to do something, why are we not stretching that sort of principle into our governance system if we really have the wherewithal to deal with corruption? You understand? So for me, I think it's very unfortunate, and usually when these things are brewing, I think the president should avoid coming out with these categorical statements, because then we will be seen to be trying to even predict whatever is going to happen. So if eventually the people decide that, okay, let's put up a committee to look at these things, the president had made things clear and all those things. And so I think it's avoidable. If you look at it, the issue about, there was an issue about the drones, for instance, right? And the president parried it away by talking about guinea fowls flying. Yes, there might be an issue about the president thinking that we need to do that. But there is another argument about this drone issue, the issue about cost and the issue about priority. Certainly these are not flimsy, these are not fanciful concerns that people are raising. So you cannot just push that away and create the impression as if people are just saying that we shouldn't do it. No, there are legitimate questions that people are raising. If we're going to do it, the cost involved, and then the priority. Should we prioritize this over some other pressing issues within the health sector and all this? So these are legitimate issues. But when you want to just brush it just because it's... And even though the opposition might be the one who have raised it, other ordinary Ghanaians have also raised certain concerns about that. So I think we should avoid this tendency to almost always rubbish something. And there was a very interesting thing about the Galamsey issue that the president said. And did you know what happened? Did you see what happened? There was the president talking about his commitment to fighting this thing and all those things. And then we hear the Chinese lady who was going to be prosecuted, who was being prosecuted for illegal mining. The Attorney General entered a nolli prosequi.
Well, we're told that she's since been...
And she's been... And this is the tragedy.
You're saying that's illegal?
No, the interesting thing about nolli prosequi is that it is not illegal. The Attorney General...
Or it questions the commitment.
The Attorney General has that authority to enter into a nolli prosequi, and they have no responsibility to explain why. But that is why in other jurisdictions, they hardly use that. They don't use it. But in Ghana, we use it quite often. Because the danger is that, this is the thing, even before sentencing, you can just come and say, no, I don't want to pursue the matter. And you are not under any obligation to explain to anyone. So you don't use it lightly. But when Ghanaians commit these offenses, we take them through the legal process and prosecute them. If she is a foreigner and she's committed this offense, why don't you prosecute her? And if you like, let her country enter into a negotiation with us and say, okay, can you repatriate her also? But all of a sudden, you've done these things. Are you not emboldening people and all these things? So in one breath, we put in policies and mechanisms to deal with situations, but in another breath, we are defeating that same policy. And I think that is unfortunate.
How strangely powerful she is, Aisha Wan.
I can't believe it.
You know, because look, the number of times she's been arrested and the number of times she has just gone back to doing the exact same thing she was arrested for. It beggars belief. It beggars belief. And just 3 days ago, Erastus Asare Donko went to a mining site run by Aisha Wan. Just 3 days ago. Okay, so when you say nolli prosequi,
I mean, I'm not interested. Sanike Saniaya, Asem Fanasemko. Basically, that's what you are saying.
I will not prosecute this matter.
Asem Fanasemko. When she had committed the atrocity, she had dealt or alleged atrocity here. And our laws allow us to deal with her. And let us deal with her. If we find her guilty, let's mete out the punishment. Let her country come and negotiate for us to release her and all those things. But we haven't done that. And then the president talked about the fact that he would not sell the country's sovereignty to China. Yes, it's never going to happen. I don't think the president would do that. But it's the indirect cessation of sovereignty. And these are some of the things that makes people worried.
Anyway, well, many views have been expressed about yesterday's event. One of them by the Media Foundation for West Africa. Suleiman Abrahima was immediately on social media expressing his displeasure. He called it the worst media encounter ever. Let's hear him.
For me, I think this, I would say, is the worst ever presidential media encounter that I've witnessed since the inception of the Fourth Republic. And I thought that year on year, time and time, we would have been improving on this whole encounter so that the impact and the purpose for which they are done would be served. I think that what really happened, in my view, was literally the president addressing the nation, kind of as they used to say, a state broadcast. And perhaps it was about spicing it up with media people being present in the room and maybe garnishing it with the opportunity of a few journalists being given the chance to ask questions. As you mentioned, why would you have an hour and a half media encounter? And I believe the essence is to provide an opportunity for the journalists to ask questions that are on the minds of people. And then you have an hour and a half encounter, so 90 minutes, and the president literally takes away about 70 minutes,
right?
Of that
running
time.
Through his government's
Exactly.
achievement.
Yeah, Suleiman Abrahima, not mincing words at all, right?
Yes, scathing criticism.
No, but if I think looking at the press encounters, I mean, I'm not including the Jerry days because Jerry was not making himself available. But from Mills to Kufuor, during Kufuor's tenure, I wasn't around, but I was monitoring to this. Yeah, I think this was a low point. I agree. This was a low point because apart from everything, what they did was that they exposed the president in a way that you don't expose the chief executive of the land. In
if you say exposure, what
in the fact that they exposed him in the sense that it appeared as if he wasn't properly briefed. It appeared as if he was rushed into it. It appeared as if he was not prepared for it.
Should the president be answering every question? I don't think
no,
so.
You see, that is one of the problems as well, and it's all about media literacy. And sometimes, but I think for the president, when you look at his days as a lawyer and in parliament, he has high media literacy. So he knows that he's not under any obligation to answer questions there and there. If you can't answer the question there and there, you can provide the answer later. And he said that in some of the things. And he said, I would invite some of these people to come and say. But the unfortunate thing is that some of the people, when the president invited them, they didn't have matters. You know the question about the Zongo development thing as well. The guy asked questions and Mustafa Hamid was invited. And the answers he gave really was not too forthcoming. But what I think should happen with this particular encounter was that because there were a lot of questions that were left unanswered. And I think the media should follow up.
I won't tell you.
Yeah, before you go in, we have to go on stream. We have a great team that we had sent there, of course, including Kwejo. And I'm told the questions were so much stringed together, there would have been no escape. It's not a title of a movie. It really would have been the event. But that's why we decided also to bring one of us onto the stream to discuss the subject. And Obi, Philip Osebunso is a host for Ekusi Seng on Asempa FM. Good morning to you, Obi.
Good morning, Roland. And good morning to the team.
You were part of the team from multimedia to the encounter. And you couldn't ask a question. But I first would have to ask you, why was that not possible?
I think it was down to time management. I mean, we got the information that this whole program will start at 5 p.m. The president got into the hall at 21 minutes after 5. He took the opening prayer. He began speaking at, I think, 26 minutes after 5. The president ended his speech at some 7 minutes after 6. So that was close to 40 minutes for the speech. And then the ground rules were set by the information minister. The first round of questions were from 6 journalists, and all the 6 questions took 4 minutes. The president, in response to those 6 questions, which took 4 minutes, actually spoke for 20 minutes. And then we had the second round of questions, which were from 3 journalists, and the third round of questions, which was from, again, another 6 journalists. So in all, 15 questions out of a possible 70 were asked. I mean, my worry is that this was the presidential media encounter. It was the day for the media. We've heard a lot from the president's appointee, because every other week there is a media press at the information ministry where a minister will go there, speak about progress, their respective ministries and all of that. So we know what government has been doing over the past year. So this was the time for the media to then probe further on the information we received from government so far. Unfortunately, this turned into, another platform for the president to again speak to us. So it was not about the president, it was for the media, and I think that's one thing the organizers would have to check. It took away, the real essence of the gathering, where the media was to be given the opportunity to ask questions. Because if you take a 90-minute event, and the president alone took about 70 minutes with 20 minutes for the media, that was really, really pathetic.
Now, when it comes to the president's responses, and even some of his responses lays with concerns and criticisms of the questions, perhaps emanating or relating to the opposition, and criticizing civil society and even critical media people or media communication. Is that problematic for you or not?
It was a bit surprising. I mean, because the essence of this whole thing, and let's face it, nobody can discount, this media encounters. It really goes a step to strengthen our democracy. And when you watch across the African sub-region, I've had calls from friends in Nigeria and all of that, and they are wondering, I mean, this is happening in Ghana, that you have the opportunity to interrogate a president, because for them, it's news. It's something that's alien to them. But we have this opportunity. So it tells you we've made a lot of progress on our democratic journey. So yes, it's about time government came to the realization that you will not have the media, singing your praises all the time. You will not have civil society singing your praises all the time. And when you have that candor, that good spirit to accept criticism when they come, and then you respond when you have the information to respond to, it all builds our democratic, credential as a country. So for that, I think it was in bad taste when a question is asked and you feel the question is, because, I mean, let's face it, if a lot more of the guys had gotten the opportunity to ask the questions, some of the questions probably would have been a bit more critical than even what we heard. So for the 15 people, some very brilliant questions were asked and all of that. But I think, as expected, you don't expect the president to give very, very, very spot-on answers to all of the questions. But obviously, there were some questions he was totally clueless about, because on the issue of the central medical stores, the response was obvious. He had to transfer that to the Minister of Health. On the Oslo one, he had to transfer to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So for that one, you can grant. And the amnesty for him to admit that for these ones, he had no clue, even though it was surprising, because as the commander-in-chief, as the CEO of the corporate entity Ghana, you expected that the president would have a fair idea of some of these.
Obi, I have to wrap up with you, but there's a last one. The issues about the allegations against his appointees, and then him parrying it to mean that the opposition were raising much ado about nothing issues of corruption against his appointees.
I think it's something the president would have to check, because it's becoming one too many, especially so when the issues are being handled by another arm of government, which is the legislature. The president, who is head of the executive, would have to check his commentary about issues in Parliament. It doesn't bode well for our democracy when Parliament is considering issues, because you remember in the cash for scandal as well, there was a similar commentary from the president trying to rubbish what was happening in there. I don't think it really sends the right signal. So of course, based on the briefing he has every right to want to take a position, but that position should not come across as rubbishing what's happening in the Legislative Assembly. That I think it's not proper, and the president would have to get that.
Well, thank you very much, Obi. Obi is a host for Ekusi Sang on Asempa FM.
Yeah, and we've got to say a big thank you to our guest in the studio as well, Lawyer Tanko. Always a pleasure. Always gives us great value, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
So let's hope we can get more of him.
I'm grateful to be here.
Now I know you don't celebrate Christmas as a religious, holiday, but everybody gets into the season. And I wonder what sort of we're thinking already about food. We think with our stomachs here, so we're thinking about food. What sort of foods do people celebrate the season with? And I wonder whether you have any food traditions in your house for Christmas time.
Well, usually what happens was that just like as we do during Eid, we share with our neighbors. Our neighbors would bring us one or two things, and because of the halal thing, so they would ask me to come and do the slaughter, and they would serve us some rice and sometimes chicken, shinkafa, and all those things. So, but usually I use the period to stay at home. And yesterday the president said that we should be keeping the money at home. We shouldn't be spending them
on outside.
Outside.
Yes.
So yeah,
he was speaking directly to someone in the audience.
But I want to take the opportunity to also wish the whole of Ghana a very, very, very Merry Christmas, and let's not throw our hands in despair. This is the only country we have, and let's continue praying. But prayer alone would not solve the problem. We need to be proactive, but let's be persistent in our calling for accountability on duty bearers.
Yes.